through the actual presentation because mine's more of a hands-on demo of accessibility and automation combined. So similar to what the other speakers spoke about using like Chrome tools or various like testing tools or auditing tools, one of the things that I'm going to demonstrate is how to build that actually into your process like immediately rather than as a second step or something like that. So disclaimer, I'm going to show you about Axe, which is produced by Deque. I don't work for them. I don't get paid by them. I just like their product. And I actually saw the NPR in your Chrome, you had Axe actually installed too. So a lot of tools out there. There's tons of them. This is just one that I have found to be incredibly easy to use and useful. So a little bit about Axe, i.e. the accessibility engine. So Deque built this lightweight JavaScript framework that is portable into pretty much every testing framework out there. So if you're in dev or have a dev team, you can build it into your unit testing or your Selenium or your Cucumber or whatever as more of like an actual service. And then you could also, which is, there is a Chrome developer tool, which we saw in the NPR screen. And then I'm going to kind of show you the Phantom.js implementation. But this is a list of all the different tools that the Axe core is what it's called, can be plugged right into it. It's really neat. And again, I'm not getting paid by it. So here is like just some links. I'm going to disseminate this PowerPoint presentation and also the code that I'm going to show you as in my Git repo you can all access. I'll get to that a little bit later, but basically, so Axe is a core, and there's a link to their repo, and then they also have a very, very extensive amount of API documentation. So if your developers are hooking it into various testing tools, they can look at it and other stuff. And then they also, what's cool is because it's open source, they have a lot of other people building stuff on top of their core, and that's one of the things that I'm actually going to show you. So one of the other projects. Before I get into the cool automation stuff, I'm going to just show you the Chrome developer tool extension, which is very similar to the Chrome one. So I decided to do a little audit of, the meetup.com site, right? And basically you push a little button, which I'll show you in this screen, and it comes up with a whole list of, errors and so forth. So what's neat about this is that not only does it show you the errors, but it shows you the code that's erroring out. It also shows you which compliance levels you may not be passing. So that's in the top right-hand corner. And then if you hit the inspect button, it'll actually show you in the DOM, which particular element isn't passing. And then the one thing I actually really like is it links to the spec. So if you click more info, you can actually go to W3C right away, and you can actually reference, if you are or aren't passing and so forth. I will caveat that they're continuously building this tool, so there are false positives and things like that. And it is after the page renders when you use the Chrome tool. So if you basically, whatever you see on the page and you hit analyze is what gets rendered. So if there's Ajax or anything like dynamic, it won't, analyze that stuff. It's only what's in the DOM at that very moment in time. One of their bugs, which is a little silly, but when you use it, it usually scrolls to the bottom of the page because it wants to analyze the entire DOM. So one thing you'll do is you'll have to just scroll back up to actually see everything. But this is kind of cool, right? So it tells you like, HTML basics too, right? Like it's not just accessibility, it's ID attribute values must be unique. That's something that like is HTML validation, but it affects accessibility because if you have more than one ID in your DOM that's the same one, a screen reader won't know what to reference, or it might repeat it again, or something like Dragon, if you're trying to do something, it might actually not know which one if there are two of them. So it's not just an accessibility tool, it's also just a basic fundamental HTML auditing tool. So this is, the Chrome plugin. I will break out of here really quickly, and I'll just kind of show you it in the live. Let's see if I can do this while looking over my shoulder. So if I inspect, I built a little mock-up here, which I'll show you, and I hit Axe, and then I hit Analyze, and it shows me that I have errors. It scroll down like I mentioned before. I scroll back up, and I can click on something like this, and it'll say, oh, okay, here's my HTML, the home link, which is this guy. It doesn't have enough color contrast. We heard that a couple of times, right? And then you can, inspect it And what it'll do is it'll actually show you in the DOM. And this is where probably the Chrome tool could actually help out too, because then you can run a Chrome and do some different examples and things like that. So I didn't know that it actually showed you suggestions of change, which is kind of cool. But so that's, you know, Axe. The one thing that's kind of annoying for me is like I have to do this outside of my banging on the keyboard while I'm writing code, right? I have to go in the browser, I have to be on the page that I want to do, and I have to hit analyze, and then I have to review it, and then I have to make changes. So what Axe did is they built this plugin, but if you build it into your testing software, it does it automatically. So let's get out of here. Unless anybody wants to see another page being analyzed, I'll just get right into the cool stuff. So let's get back to this. So let's automate. So I'm going to explain a little bit about what I did. How many developers are there in the room here, just so I have a frame of reference? Okay, so about half. Okay, does anybody use precompilers like Gulp, Grunt, you know, Sass, anything like that, less? Okay, so most of you will know exactly what I'm talking about. The other people, I've kind of outlined it out here a little bit. So Gulp is a JavaScript framework that allows you to compile and automate some of your development cycles. So like with CSS, which is a compiled code, there's frameworks like Less and Sass that are uncompiled that will allow you to do a lot more flexibility and things like that. And Gulp is running all the time and doing a lot of magic, you know, as you're actually banging on the keyboard. So I have Gulp as my primary compiler. Grunt is the other popular one. I think there's a couple more, but Gulp is top notch. I like it. Sass, so I'm using Sass as my CSS pre-compiled language, which allows me to do things like variables and, you know, mix-ins. So like when you're talking about like, you know, color palettes and keeping, you know, things in check, you can write a variable called blue, and every piece of CSS that's referencing blue, you could change it to a different color if you wanted without going back to all of your CSS files and stuff like that. So it really kind of helps. Webpack is a JavaScript AMD bundler. So this is where we're doing a lot of enterprise big JavaScript structures. So we're using Webpack to basically take a whole lot of JavaScript partials. So imagine like a CMS library where you'll have a component for a hero and a component for a carousel and a component for, like, let's say a modal. It bundles all of that code into one, but it doesn't access the code unless you need it. So it's one file to get cached, which is great for performance, but it's really very powerful. If you've never used the next one, you need to do it. Browser Sync, and I'll demonstrate this. So Browser Sync is a plugin that runs in Gulp or Grunt, and what it does is it allows you to have as many browsers open as you want in as many locations as you want, and as you're coding, all of the browsers are refreshing while you're actually coding. So one of the cool things is, like, I can have my iPhone simulator on the screen and my Windows IE and, well, I can't have that, and my Chrome and my Firefox all at once, and the minute I hit save in my HTML editor, all of my browsers will reload. So it allows me to actually see what's going on in various states and all that kind of stuff. In addition, that if you have Browser Sync running on an IP address that can be accessed from another computer, that other person looking at it will also see those changes. It's really, really very powerful, very cool. So the key to this automation is Gulp Axe WebDriver. So I didn't write it. I found the plugin. Basically, it's a gentleman that wrote a Gulp Phantom.js wrapper around Axe core. So what it does is basically you run it and it creates a Phantom.js, which is basically a visual-less or headless browser. So it doesn't actually exist, but it actually acts as a real browser to do the test. So just like I hit analyze in the Chrome extension tool, it essentially does the same thing and you just don't see what's happening, right? So it's behind the scenes. Okay, so here's just a kind of example of my Gulp, build. So I, build the style sheets, I build the HTML, I do a little cleaning, I do some linting, which is analyzing if my JavaScript is actually accurate or not. I don't know why it does that, but I'll quickly switch back. I build all my JavaScript, I launch my environment, which is that browser sync, I clean a little bit more JavaScript, it shows me what my environment is, and it does a little bit other stuff and so forth, right? Then I'm going to show you this in a live demonstration, but basically while I'm coding, if I have this window visible, you'll see that the minute I hit save, it says, oh, okay, I'm going to test the URL. It's found 3 accessibility violations, and it shows me the traversing of the object in the DOM, which is body, nav, row, columns, blah, 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 and it tells me that this element has a color contrast of 3.0, which we learned is too low, right? So this is actually being displayed to me live while I'm coding. I never actually even have to look at my browser. So if you don't have 2 screens, or if you don't like looking at your other screen, you can actually just look at this while you're coding, and it'll show you all these errors and so forth, right? Cool, right? Get it? Okay. So let me sit down. Let me do some coding. I'm going to switch views so I can actually see it. Okay. So I'm going to show you how this all works, if I can do that. Okay. Okay, so I built a really bad dummy HTML page for this.
Don't you find that to be hard to do now?
What?
To build a bad HTML page?
It was easy by installing the Foundation Zerb framework, which is like Bootstrap. Okay, so I love Foundation, don't get me wrong, but fundamentally there's a whole lot going on that's wrong. But let me first stop my environments here quickly, so I'll just clear it so you see what happens. Okay, so I have in my folder structure here, I'll just quickly show you if I can find it, what I'm talking about technically. And all of this is available for you to download. So I basically have, my Gulp file. I'm using ES6. All my node modules. Here's my source. And basically, this is essentially what becomes my web server. Okay, so enough about that. We don't care. But when I run Gulp and a special command that I give it, you'll see that it's now starting to do its magic, right? And hopefully it runs, right? Okay, good. And you'll see that automatically my browser opened up and refreshed. Like I didn't even have to do that. It magically did that. And if you noticed in the top right-hand corner, which you'll see in a little bit, it said browser sync and so forth, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So right now, this is more or less how I develop, right? I have the log or the Gulp log on the left, and I have my browser on a different screen. But I'll pull this up. So this is my code base, and it didn't test it on load because I would assume that I'm just going to like make a little change here. So I'm just going to delete one line and hit save, and you'll see that over here it did a local host, so that's my web server, and here are all the errors, and I'm going to bang these out really, really quickly. So a lot of them are color contrast because of Foundation, again. And then there's a couple down here like this image doesn't have an alt tag or an alternative text model, because you don't have to use an alt tag. You could use ARIA, which you wouldn't, but you could. Okay, so it actually references that. And then I also have a little tiny form field in here that has no labels, right? So right off the bat, I'll show you the page again just so you can see it here. Over here, just so you can see it refresh when I make a change. So I'm going to go into my SAS, and I'm going to get rid of all the Foundation stuff really quickly. So once I do this, I comment it out, I hit save, you'll see that immediately my browser refreshed, right? Okay, and if I move this over a little bit, okay, you'll see now that I have no more color contrast errors, right? So that's cool. So if I had a little bit more space, you could see all this in real time, right? So while it doesn't look pretty, I'm not going to go redesign it. I just wanted to show you that you can do this. So now let's get rid of that image error. So I go look at my HTML file, and I threw in an image in here somewhere. I think let's just do it the old-fashioned way. Okay, here. So I took a picture of bacon. Oh yeah, it's my logo, right? Okay, but even though that a logo doesn't need an alt attribute to it, it still needs the actual attribute, a null, right? We just learned that. So if I add alt equals blank, okay, and you'll see it just finished, and now I have one error left. Okay, fantastic, I'm working. So while, in the gaming, like you could do an audit afterwards, think of if every one of your developers had a tool like this going at the same time, you would reduce your HTML errors, you would reduce your accessibility errors like really fast because it's in your face. Now, just to kind of give you the opposite end of the spectrum here, let's assume that I had, well, let's get rid of the accessibility errors first. So we come down to my little form down here, I think I have form somewhere. Where is it? I put a lot of stuff in here. Okay, so here's my form, right? So I'm going to add a label because we need to have a label. So you could do it like this, you know, input, right? And then I'm going to wrap my label around here. That's how I like doing it. I hit save, and I have no accessibility violations according to this page. Okay. Now, before I go on any further, I'm going to show you something really, really cool. Okay. So I built a configuration file for this, for Axe and Gulp. Okay. So what I've done is I've said, okay, here's my dev environment, which is traditionally what you do with Gulp, and here's my, you know, where my web server environment is. That's nothing unique. But what I did do is I created my own accessibility rules. All of these attributes in this object are part of the Axe plugin. So for instance, like I built enable or disable. So if it was actually, you know, annoying me that I was doing a lot of, you know, maybe pre-coding and all of these errors are flipping out on me, like I might turn it off, which I'll show you here. So if I undo all of the good stuff that I just did, you'll notice that it doesn't actually audit my code, right? So you may want to turn that on, or maybe a gatekeeper like a lead or a manager will turn that on and off depending upon, you know, the developer or what the point they are in the stage. So I added that ability in my Gulp file. Let me turn it back on because I want to show you something neat, okay? And then I gotta, unfortunately, you have to stop and start Gulp every time that you make a change to the configuration. Okay, but one cool thing is that the Axe program and the web driver that this guy built, okay, you're allowed to post in as many files or URLs as you want to be audited. So in my case, I'm building the site using partial HTML files. And one of the accessibility criteria is that everything audited needs to have like an HTML tag and a body and a head and all that kind of stuff. Well, if I'm auditing individual files, which is just chunks, all the way. So instead of doing like auditing something like, you know, index.html, I actually pass in a URL. Now you're saying, well, what happens if I wanted to do a different page or a different, you know, or more than one page? They built it so you can just pass in as many URLs as you want. So I could add as many supplemental URLs as I wanted, and all of those will be tested every time that you make a change, regardless of what page you're on. So if you were building a component in a CMS that was, let's say, on 5 different pages, but maybe they had different treatments or they had different styles or something like that, it'll scan those just like if you were to open up 5 browsers and do it in Chrome or in the Axe developer tool. So it's super, super powerful. The other thing that it does just natively, I didn't do any of this, is you're allowed to include or exclude selectors. So I could do something like exclude the nav or include the nav. So I only want to scan the nav because I'm working on it, but everything else is junk, right? Or vice versa. So you can pass in and out of these parameters. And in the documentation of the API by Axe, there are all these special conditions and things like that. One of the things that the Phantom.js plugin doesn't do yet, but Axe does, is you could tell it what priority level you want to check against. So you could say, like, I only want to check against section 508, or I only want to check against, you know, WCAG 2.0 level 2. Like, you get to pick those things, and you can pass those in as parameters. So it's really, really, really powerful. And imagine, like, basically doing your site, and instead of, you know, you can make changes, and now it should tell me, look at all these errors I've got, and part of the job is to window them down. So this automation is great for developers, but it can also be amazing for QA people because they could pass in a whole site, 15,000 URLs essentially, and it could test out all of those, and you could have a log actually printed and all that kind of stuff. So there's a real lot of powerful things. Since I mentioned it, I'm just going to show it to you here. So here's my web page again. I want to just kind of show you how this works with browser sync. So let me open up my iOS here. I didn't plan to do this, but I'll do it anyway. So here's my iOS simulator, right? And if I open up this page, so one of the cool things that I did here is I put in this accordion, but it doesn't work until I click this bacon. But you see how I'm scrolling up and down and the actual page moves? And then if I select bacon, which I probably have a JavaScript, you'll see that it turned like gray here. And if I click, that, it does something. I might have an error, but essentially this is really neat because now if I come over here and do it, I can actually do it vice versa. Very powerful too. So between using Browser Sync and Gulp and Axe plugin, all of my, let's call it first draft QAing is being done while I'm coding. And Gulp also allows you to do things like JavaScript checking. So if you're a JavaScript developer, if I open up a JavaScript file here and let's just change this guy. And let's say, I'm sure you've seen this 1,000 times, someone leaves off a semicolon, right? Okay, well it says here, I've got an error. So there's all these powerful tools that you can built into your compiler in addition to accessibility tools. And I'm doing this on the fly rather than going and actually using the same exact tool by inspecting and then by analyzing and doing that. So it really, really exponentially helps the development process. And on that note, I will say questions. Or we can try working.